Family Services. I welcome you to this webinar today. Our webinar today is going to be about current immigration issues. And we are blessed and fortunate to have 3 immigration experts as panelists today. And I thank them from bottom of my heart for their time and for joining today on this webinar. We have Madhurima Paturi of Paturi Law from Orlando, Florida. We have Mr. Amarnath Gowda from Farmington Hills, Michigan. And we have Shaju Jacob of Phyllis Porter Law of Troy, Michigan. These 3 experts are going to share their knowledge, and they will answer all the questions or as many questions as possibly can in this 90 minutes webinar. I'm going to turn this over to Madhurima now, and she will take it from there. Madhurima.
Thank you, Swati, and thank you to My Family Services for doing this to the community. It's so important and need to be discussed at this timings. And my name is Madhurima Paturi, as Swati mentioned. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I practice immigration law here. And I have with me Mr. Amarnath Gowda and Mr. Shaju Jacob. I'll give them a minute to introduce themselves. And I will be your moderator today. And we will be discussing a lot of changes which happened because of the pandemic or the administration changes, especially beginning from this year. And I think it's going to be really empowering and also helpful for the community. So, Mr. Gowda.
Thank you, Madhurima. Thank you, My Family Services, for having us for this immigration webinar. As introduced, my name is Amarnath Gowda. I am practicing here in Farmington Hills with law firm Amarnath Gowda, LLB JDPC. I am practicing immigration for past 30 years or so in the same area. I'll be happy to answer any of the viewers' questions here. Thank you for having me. Back to you, Madhurima.
Mr. Jacob, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Shaju Jacob. I'm an immigration attorney with Ellis Porter. I'm one of the 2 managing partners with Ellis Porter. We're a full-service immigration firm with offices in Troy is our main office, and Ann Arbor, Detroit, and now the UK as well. So more than happy to assist in any way I can and answer any questions for the people out there.
Oh, well, thank you to both of you. Let's dive into right into the most important topics which we need to cover this evening. I think the pandemic created a lot of uncertainty in the community. The changes to the immigration, especially to the proclamations the president introduced, kind of created more chaos to the community. Mr. Gowda, you want to start telling about what is this proclamations? This is kind of almost like a new concept to the community, and why is it needed and what changes it brought to the community?
Sure, thank you, Madhurima. Before I go into this proclamation, let me make it clear for all our viewers. This is general information about the President's executive order recently issued. This is not a case-specific answers to any of your cases. We strongly recommend you take professional advice, consultation, and it is general information. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer your questions. Then again, it is better to go and speak to a professional. Okay. So having said that, let me say that this executive order was issued on 22nd April 2020. It took effect on 23rd April. Primarily, what it does is suspending the entry of certain immigrants and non-immigrants into US. So it is suspending, it's not a permanent. and it is temporary. It is until December 31st. Initially, the executive order suspended only for 90 days, and then President asked Department of Homeland Security, primarily who is in charge of immigration, to get in touch with Department of Labor and the Secretary of State to see how this pandemic and then influx of immigrants and non-immigrants affects our economy, and also to stop any COVID entry. So that was the primary intention, at least, was put forward by the this executive order. So that is the gist of it. And there, what are the categories that this executive order suspended for temporarily is certain immigrants and certain non-immigrants. That we can go in detail as Madhurima asking.
Jacob, you want to add anything to that proclamations, what Mr. Gowda mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, it was specific a little bit to the H-1B, H-2B, L-1, and certain Js. Those were at least the non-immigrant categories they focused on. And at first we were a little surprised because with all of the executive orders we get, they're pretty vague. And then later on, we have to figure out what they actually mean. And that's what we've kind of been dealing with. The good news is, originally as they came out, it was pretty scary. It seemed like it was a open-ended, no getting visas if you're abroad. But since then, we've found out there is a national interest exception. They've broken down like 4 different categories. So you could actually, if you're abroad, still get a visa and enter now. There's the public health exception, a request by U.S. government agency, and if you're resuming ongoing employment in the same category. That was the big one that we weren't sure about initially. So at least in our office, we've seen some success on various prongs of that exception, but it's still been limited. And I think the biggest people it's affecting are definitely people who maybe got accepted into the H-1B lottery, they were approved, and they were planning to come here on October 1st. Those individuals, are not going to be able to. And as Mr. Gowda correctly said, this goes till the 31st of December, but the executive order allows for him to extend it. So that's an unknown. And in addition, the language that was a little worrisome is having these other government agencies kind of look into how immigration, non-immigrant immigration is affecting the overall economy, which is in my opinion a little laughable, because we know unemployment in these STEM or H-1B positions is extremely low. Even with COVID, it hasn't affected the unemployment numbers in those areas. So I think it doesn't make as much sense, but that's where we are right now with that.
I think that the other piece to cover that one is the H-4 visas, I guess. A family separation is one of the biggest trauma. I think we are going through this. Either H-1 staying here and the H-4 flew back, or they got stuck because the consulates doesn't have the visa, or if you don't have the visa on particular timing, you can't obviously to come in back, I think there is actually class action actually going on for this family separation between the H-1 and H-4 right now, which is very traumatic. And as you said, that these are uncertain times, and we don't know, is it going to be just the end of the December? Are we looking beyond? Is going to be very dramatic. So, well, just shift little bit to the student visas. It's kind of created other chaos a couple of months ago, because of the pandemic. Department of State is a little bit liberal, and they said that, hey, why don't you just stay home and maintain the social distance and do the online class? They kind of made that changes with the original rule, and they gave that break. Then again, before the summer started, they said, hey, it's like a couple of weeks before the summer or something like that. It's like last minute before everybody started the semester. They were telling that you have to come back in class. It doesn't work as online because that doesn't qualify as the F1 rule. but they're the one who gave the break, I know, but they want to go back to the original room. That kind of created a chaos in the community, but thank you to the MIT and Harvard for bringing the lawsuits right away. And I know that it got resolved. Any of you can pick up explaining more. Is that something concerning that we should think about? It's going to come back, or should we worry? I mean, that what is the situation happening with the student visas right now? Is it resolved completely? What should the community should know?
At least for time being, it is resolved for this semester. I'm sure it is going to come back for the next semester. As you correctly mentioned, thanks to MIT and Harvard and other major schools, which took immigration to the court, and they were able to make a settlement where they were able to, for this semester, online classes is okay. Earlier, they proposed as part of this deal to have either in-person classes or hybrid, which is in-person and online classes, and or completely online classes. So those are the things were discussed and reached right now. It is for this semester they allowed pretty much all online classes. As you know that every student, to maintain status, they are supposed to take about 8 credit hours. Each semester they are allowed a maximum of 1 credit hour online, not more than 1 credit hour. So that was the case. In many cases, some students were taking more than 1 credit hour of online courses. Then they will be violating the status. So we have to wait and see what happens to the next semester and following thereafter.
Yeah, I piggyback off on that and echo statements. I think typical for this administration, they have a broad stroke and then they don't realize the consequences of what they say. And then there's constant pushback, and then they find out, wow, this will have huge consequences. We've already seen foreign enrollment plummeting, and in entire departments worried about whether they're going to remain open if they can't get foreign students, especially in a lot of our STEM fields. So I think we're okay for this semester. I think with immigration in general, I don't think anyone should look beyond November. Personally, I have a runway of this election, and I'm not looking beyond that for any predictions, because I think all bets are off depending on how the election goes. But there's so many factors we can't figure out whether it's going to be a vaccine for COVID or what. But at least for this semester, I think the F1 students are fine. The only thing that I would, comment on is just recently, I think it was today or maybe it was yesterday, that USCIS came out and just told F1 students who are working, make sure you notify your DSO, your designated school official, any changes in your employment. They have to update their CVIS record. So if you've been unemployed, you have to report that. If you change your employer within 10 days, you have to notify them, and the schools have to update CVIS within 21 days. So my only advice for the F1 students who are maybe not necessarily studying, but are on OPT or STEM OPT, is take that seriously, because whenever they make an announcement like that, it looks like it's something that they're focusing on when it comes to enforcement. So I would not be lax at all and work closely with your DSO in any changes to your employment while you're on F1.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I know it's not like a changes or rules or anything like that. It just came spontaneously yesterday. An email from the USCIS saying that, hey, you need to update, which is already existing rule.
Right.
That's kind of like smelling something coming on the way.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned that. I think it's so important. It's a reminder for everybody. Just don't forget to update your service. So what's happening with the consulates right now? You know that as much as the chaos inside the US right now, there's so many hundreds and thousands of the people are waiting, either going for the green card interviews or just a H1, H4, or any tourist visa, student visas. So all different kind of the varieties of the visas. Everybody is waiting outside right now. So are they opened, or is it depend upon the country, or how is it going? Do you have any updates on the consulates opening?
Shaju, you can take it and I can add on.
Sure. Yeah, the consulates we've seen, depending on the consulates, have opened up a little bit and they've limited their service though. So we are seeing, depending on the consulate, some services being open. For the vast majority though, what we look at for H's and L's, because of the presidential proclamation, they're not going to be eligible to get a new visa. And for people who've been waiting for this update, now they are there and they're looking to come back. They are eligible. We have seen they're very, very, very backlogged. So I still haven't seen anyone necessarily actually get the visa yet. Some of the appointments have been scheduled. The one issue though that we saw is prior to the proclamation coming down, a lot of individuals received a 221G, which is like a background. And unfortunately, the consulates have said that if you did receive a 221G, they are not processing those right now. I've had a few clients report that. So we thought the 221Gs were just basically because this proclamation came out and a lot of people weren't sure who would apply to. So the Department of State was waiting for some further information, which we now have. But they've been told, yep, we just don't have the bandwidth to handle 221Gs or any background investigations or anything. So extremely slow. I just think that's the situation. The only good news is what we're seeing in a lot of cases is people still, at least most of our clients, aren't in too much of a rush to come back yet. There's still some hesitancy when it comes to traveling, of course, as we can understand, and the cost and whatnot. So it's going to be something that we're going to have to hopefully figure out by the end of the year. And I think then when things start to hopefully return back to normal, it'll be a bigger issue. But they are open, but limited.
Okay.
Yeah, I echo whatever Shaju said. They are open. They are accepting the applications for visa appointments. Appointments are scheduled in some cases, but way after November, December. And for emergent cases, they are accepting applications and they are scheduling depending upon what it is. The procedure is first you have to apply for a regular visa, and then again, based on the visa appointment, you have to again apply saying that emergent situation. You upload the documents, what is the emergent situation, and then they will review and see if it is eligible for considering. If it is like health grounds or whatever, they do taking those. I'm particularly speaking about the consulates in India, okay? Mm-hmm. Because I have at least one case where they have scheduled an emergent visa issuance appointment. So otherwise, you have to just wait.
I don't know if any of you has experience in your offices. This is one of the common questions we are getting from the community. If somebody has the immediate relative interview finished and they have only certain time to enter into the US, right? Either it's like 2 months or 3 months, they need to come into the country and they need to get their green card while they're in the US physically, So a lot of people couldn't make it because of the COVID, obviously, So what are you suggesting them in that kind of the situations, especially to the consulates in India? Just email it to them about it, or how are they extending those things?
No, what is the, I'm sorry, I didn't get your...
So the green card interviews, which was done back outside the country to the Department of State and everything else, they're just waiting for them to travel back into the US to get their green card. They have only 2 or 3 months validity, right? They have to enter back into the country once the interview is finished. But a lot of people couldn't travel right now because of the COVID. So what if they can't make it within that 90 days to enter into the US as their permanent resident to receive their permanent resident card? Are we asking them to email to the consulate to extend that date, or what is the usual procedure happening in your offices? I'm just asking generally.
No, unless it is anything related to aged out issues, children and things like that, then they have to make an attempt to come back, okay? I have not seen whatever the situation where they cannot come back and what is their take on it, either consulate or later at the border. They do have informed that they will adjudicate, or at the consulate level, they will issue visas if you can show that the children are aging out and things like that. Otherwise, if it is just a regular visa, and we can always ask for extension through the consulate, that is available. That option is there always. So if there is no age-out problem, then they should be fine. If it is age-out problem, they should contact consulate immediately, explain what is the situation, why they cannot make it.
Okay. So, well, if we'll move back to the United States again from the consulates, the H-4 EADs, there's so much delays in getting the H-4 EADs, either it's because of the lack of going to the biometrics or just a department in general. I'm not sure what's going on back on that, you know. Any of you want to take on the H-4 EAD delays, or what's going on?
I mean, we're seeing the same thing, tremendous delays, and it has become a serious issue, especially for people who haven't received biometrics. You know, they're really worried, and I don't think it's a pressing need in terms of the government, where they're making it a priority. The H-4 EAD has always been kind of in their crosshairs. So, and especially with what they feel is high unemployment, I don't think they're a big fan of necessarily making that a priority. That being said, I think last week something came out, if you had a receipt, and you could, employers could I-9 extension based on that because of the production delays. So that was great news. I was kind of surprised by that. But for individuals who haven't received biometrics or were not far enough along to get that exception, I know a lot of people are looking at litigation as their only relief. And we currently don't have anyone who's gone that far and is looking to litigate, but really that's going to be your only option.
That's right. The car production has been delayed very, it's backlogged so much. So that's one of the reasons why immigration came out and issued that policy. So we'll consider receipt notices.
And also, I think there are situations where they're accepting the previous fingerprinting. So hopefully that would help for someone to go faster, you know. And I do heard that other attorneys had success. I don't have myself. Calling to the supervisor in circumstances where there is a financial burden or something for the H-4 EADs for the families, they can email it if they've been waiting for 6 months or so. You know, they do had a success in getting the H-4 EADs approval that way. But I don't think it's a common practice, but maybe it's an exceptional case where maybe you should just reach out to the attorney or maybe call to the USCIS and see that if there is any exceptions for yourself. And moving on, again, one more common question from the community is, green card holders are supposed to stay only 6 months outside. They can't be more than 6 months outside the country. That's the general rule. But because of the pandemic, everybody get to stay more than 6 months or even sometimes the 1 year, you know. They're hoping to come back within 6 months, and the pandemic hit. It's been 8 months, everybody's staying outside the country. So one of the questions they're asking is, are they going to, did the USCIS received any kind of new regulations that how they're going to be coming even after 6 months regulation, or is it going to be affecting the requirement for the naturalization? Do you have any information from the USCIS, or do you see on the ground that any experience from your clients on this?
We were just all three of us were talking about this, prior to the webinar. We haven't seen any official proclamation from the USCIS on how to handle this. I think all of us agree we've been advising our clients to, if possible, enter, but we know that's not always the case. I know in the past people looked at that 6-month rule or 1-year rule, and I think they were pretty aggressive with it. They thought, oh, I just have to dip my toe in. I'll come here 2 days before 6 months. You know, we have seen USCIS look at what your intent is and evidence that you haven't abandoned the U.S. as your permanent residence. So I tell people, don't just go right up to the day anyway. But we are hoping that they're going to have some discretion when it comes to that for the inability to travel and due to the COVID. But personally, in our office, we haven't had anyone, for example, over a year who's entering, and it's going to be 13 months or 14 months or 15 months. I know you had said that you had someone who recently came in with almost a year, and they got in no questions asked. Yeah. But to be clear, none of us or USCIS hasn't issued any actual formal policy on that. So we're just going based on fingers crossed and hoping they'll act human and offer some discretion. And so far, at least that's what we've seen.
Yeah. Anything to add, Mr. Gowda?
Nothing much, but our community must know that the immigration officer has a lot of discretion at the border.
Correct.
They can turn around and say that now you abandoned your residency, irrespective of how long you stay as a green card holder. If they see that you don't have real ties to US, so you have to make sure that those who are already here, you have to make sure that you have all the check boxes checked, whether you have home, whether you have employment, whether your children going to school, whether you have business doing business, or you're using your credit cards, bank accounts, and things like that. Yeah, the laundry list, you should go and make sure that you have everything checked. Otherwise, if not today, tomorrow, it's always a tough one. And as we go further, immigration will become more tough and tough on these cases where people use green cards just for travel. No, this is not a visa. Green card is not a visa. It is to stay here permanently. So community should know that whenever you get the green card, you are supposed to stay here permanently. So, having said that, there is nothing much during this COVID situation. Maybe they may be more liberal or relaxed, they may allow you to come in. They may not look into when did you go, when did you come. They may just, okay, green card, okay, come in this time. They may say that. So we don't know. So, be cautious. For future purposes, all green card holders must make sure that this is your home. This is your home.
Do you suggest any kind of the documentation they can probably collect as a proof that if they can't able to come back within 6 months, but they did try to come back, but somehow, let's say that somebody who is more risk of the coronavirus, they don't want to travel, do you suggest the community any kind of the list of the documents that they can save it as a proof to show at the border?
Sure, those who are stuck back home or overseas, they must bring along with them next time when they are traveling, and earliest when they are traveling. Make sure that if you had earlier air travel booking, make sure that you have that copy of that, and it was cancelled or postponed or whatever because of COVID situation. I mean, that shows that you were intent to come back earlier, but because of COVID situation, you didn't come. Or you were ill, or your close relatives were ill back home. So because of that reason, you have to stay back. Get those physician letters or whatever. Or your condition itself is such that you have some pre-existing conditions which is not good to travel during this COVID situation. Diabetic patients or having some heart conditions or whatever. So get a letter from a physician saying that this is not advisable to travel during COVID situation. You are prone to corona, whatever they can write. So that will make your travel much easier, hopefully.
Thank you so much. I think that those are great advice from both of you. That really helps to the community that what they can secure ahead before they start traveling. I just want to give a reminder to all the viewers, if you do have any questions, please type into the chat. We will be getting in less than a few minutes, so we'll be discussing more of those. So as we continue, Mr. Jacob, I know you were talking earlier about this. I know it's not a great news to the community, but we need to reveal this. There is an increase in the USCIS fees. Some of them are tremendously high. Some of them are probably less than 5%. Some of them are almost 80%, But it is so important to the community to know, because the reason is based on that. Maybe if you're ready and eligible, maybe you're ready to apply, Can you tell us more details about when it's happening and some of the important fees are increasing?
Yeah, so this is a news that came out on July 31st, and USCIS just announced that the rulemaking process is in place and that the average increase will be 20%. Their argument is that USCIS operates as a fee-based service. They don't necessarily get funded from Congress, so they rely on fees to remain operational. And they said the amount of work that they're seeing, that they need to increase fees in order to stay open. The last increase was 2016. And at that time, it was about, I think, a 21% increase in some areas of fees as well. So here we are 4 years later, and they're averaging 20%. Not quite inflation, but that's where we are. The unknown factor is the fee increase is supposed to happen in October 2nd to be exact. But AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and some other groups on August 20th has just filed a lawsuit. So we'll see if that's going to have any effect in slowing down or changing this fee increase. I personally don't see it affecting anything. I do think the increases will probably go into place. It seems USCIS has some wide latitude when it comes to that. So you're right. Some increases, some petitions have gone down, but some, like naturalization, has gone up by 81%. We're talking about a difference between $640 to $1,160 for the filing fee. So if we have any evidence or any advice, it's file now. Just to get in while the fees are at the lower rate, and definitely try to file before October 2nd. We'll keep our fingers crossed and hope that maybe litigation or something changes so that the fees don't go up. But I'm planning for the fees to go up on October 2nd.
Okay. I think that's very important information. I think anybody in the call, I think that we are talking about less than 6 weeks here. Talk to your lawyer, talk to your community-based organizations, or if you're doing yourself, just look into it. If you're eligible, just don't wait. And if you're interested to apply something like citizenship application, it's so important that the fees are going like almost 80%, as Mr. Jacob said. I want to come back a little bit onto the H1s. I know most of our community is something going through very vigorously because of the pandemic. I know that not just only because of the pandemic, there is also because of the administration, there is few changes happening. Like example, anybody who is working for the federal contracting, they are under radar right now. That's like a new thing for the H1Bs. Any of you has any comments on particularly on the federal contractors, or are we just in the wait watch on that? What's happening? Is the employer should know anything about it right at this point?
I'll just give 2 cents on that. Fortunately for us, most of our clients aren't really affected by that because they're not necessarily placed as federal contractors. But this stems from a state like Tennessee basically outsourcing their work, and so the federal government or the Trump administration felt like, see, we have to stop this, to prevent these jobs, U.S. jobs, being taken away and given to H-1B workers or sent abroad. The problem is the reason states like that are doing it is they can't get enough H-1. They don't have enough skilled STEM employees. They can't find it. So the problem isn't the H-1B. It's not that the jobs are getting shipped overseas. The problem is that we're not producing enough of this talent within our own borders. So you can get mad at states or federal agencies, but they really don't have really many options. If they could hire U.S. workers, software engineers left and right, they would do it. I think they wouldn't hesitate. So I think we haven't seen any major effects of this, but yeah, that is where it currently stands. It's only affecting some of these federal placements, and I'll let Mr. Gowda jump in if he's seen any issues or clients with those.
Yeah, there is a movement, as you rightly picked it on, to not only placement and also outsourcing or even consulting outside federal buildings. So they want to stop any of those federal money going into these H-1B employees. So that's the primary. If not today, they may bring in sometime later, but we don't know what it's going to, how it's going to implement it. Yeah, that's it. Back to you, Madhuma. Hello?
Yeah, her screen seems to
Looks
have
like
been frozen. We'll give her a second to see if she.
maybe.
I'll just expand a little bit on continuing on the H-1B vein, and to see if we can get her back.
Right.
One additional thing that we're seeing with the H-1Bs is recently the H-1B lottery occurred and individuals were selected, and now they reopened the cap. So what had happened is originally with the H-1Bs, they thought they received enough people, and we found out in April, but then obviously COVID happened. And so I think what happened is a lot of companies who their people were selected decided, I don't have the placement now, or I don't have the need for them, or we don't know what's going to happen. So a lot of those cases never got filed. They withdrew their filings. So, the last couple of weeks, we've seen USCIS reopen, grab some more numbers from if you already registered, so it wasn't a new process. And people got a notice that said, hey, you're eligible, please file your cap case before November. So that's the only additional H-1B kind of news I wanted to jump in. And Mother, I think you're back. So.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. I was just asking about the furloughs. How are we seeing the furloughs, and what are we suggesting in regarding to the maintenance of the status and people who can't able to travel right now, which is a very common question for the H1s and the H4s, I guess. Do you have any comments on that? People who are already existing H1s.
The furloughs will certainly delay the processing of all the applications, even though it should not affect, as we discussed earlier, all these adjudications are fee-based, but still it will be delayed. It will be delayed at the port of entries for people to come in and go out. So anyone who wants to file their extensions and things like that, it is better to file now, instead of waiting until the last moment, so that your application is there and status-wise you are fine, you are protected. And if it is H-1B extension, you can continue to work. Those things are there. So better to file as soon as possible. We don't know what happens come next month.
Yeah, always immigration is uncertainty.
Yes.
So, so it doesn't matter the H1s, H4s, B1, B2, and a lot of other visas who are here and they got laid off, or maybe they're expired their status here, the I-94. What are you suggesting them how to maintain the status before they travel back? What is the common things you're looking at?
Yeah, sure, that is a very good question. Many of non-immigrant visa holders here in US, they face this problem because of COVID situation. Many flights got cancelled, overseas flights, international flights have been cancelled. So you have to make sure that whatever the status you are in, whether you can extend the status if you are here as a visitor or business visitor, B1, B2, make sure that you file an extension application as soon as possible. You can give the same reason, flights are cancelled, COVID situation, I need 6 months and I will travel back as soon as everything, resumes, flights resumes. And if you are on H1 or H4, same situation, make sure that you file application for visitor visa if your H1 is expiring, or if your job is terminated. Either you change it to visitor visa or see whether you can get into school, some program, get into some program and change to F1. Contact the nearest school, what program you can pursue. Change it to F1 status, whatever the status you can legally change. So you must file within the time allowed. For H1B, if your job is terminated, there is a 60-day time for finding another job and filing H1B within the 60 days. If you don't find a job and file H1B within the time, see whether you can file at least B2 change of status or to F1 and maintain status. And you can always go back to H1 once you find another job. So other than that, anything want to add?
No, I think you nailed the points. You know, your primary thing is change of status to something, whether it's visitor visa, F1, but your options are really limited, unfortunately. And then, you know, people always have to understand the difference of being out of status versus being unlawfully present. You know, I believe if you're out of status and you can't leave, I can't see how that's going to ever be held against you in the future if you eventually do leave and want to process a visa. Unlawful presence is a little bit stickier because that's when your I-94 card has literally expired, right? So now it's not necessarily a status issue, but for whatever reason, your employer didn't want to file your extension, and now you're accruing unlawful presence. So you want to be careful because technically when you hit 180 days of that, you are potentially time barred for 3 years. And then it can get worse if you're unlawfully present for over a year, you can be barred for 10 years. So my only thing is talk to an attorney. If the difference between being out of status and being unlawfully present, there are significant consequences to that. And it's something that you want to look into. But obviously, if you're getting to a situation where your I-94 is about to hit 180 days and you've been here unlawfully, I would do anything you can to get out of the U.S., travel somewhere. But you don't want to hit any situation where you get to that time bar because the USCIS and the government has not come out with anything saying we're going to officially extend that or change anything for COVID. They might later, but what we're operating with now is we don't have any information. So let's be very conservative when it comes to unlawful presence, especially.
Yeah. And with a lot of changes right now happening and the delays with the biometrics and the administrative proceedings, you know, you don't have to get approved your extension or the change of status as long as you applied before your current status expires and it's pending, you're okay. But don't think that you have to get approved before your current status need to be expired. That's something it's important to know. I think we do have the question related to that. We'll get back into that. Anything you want to update about what's going on with the court case with the schedules, and do you guys have any feedback? Or in general, I think are they all having the hearings? All I see in the detention center, the hearings are the same thing in general, but non-detainee cases are something still postponed for now until the September and until the further notice. I know they keep extending on those things. Do you all have any comments on that? I just want to give us information on that. And also, if anybody on the viewer side are applied for the asylum and you are into 150 days, it's time to apply for the EAD because the regulations are changing on the August 25th. That's very, very important. We have only less than a couple of days. If you didn't do anything, you need to do overnight on Monday. That's something you need to look into it. And DACA is the same thing. There is so many changes. I know there is a court proceedings on the court orders and going back and forth about the USCIS updating the DACA applications, initial and the renewal applications. Just have an eye on that. If anybody in the community is applying, reach out to the attorneys. There are so many changes happen on that side of the immigration. I do want to cover one topic which is very near and dear to my heart, domestic violence and the immigration relief. because of the pandemic, one of the vulnerable group, I guess, is the domestic violence. The percentage tremendously changed, and the people are looking for the help, and they couldn't get it. Everybody cooped up in the house. That's something, people don't have the communication. There's no way to go. Everybody's sitting at one house, and the abuse is only getting worse, and the shelters are full. There's so many things happening, and there is no way you can get out. If you do get out, just be kind to the people, be kind to the society. Whatever the help you can give it to the victims, please do help. Do help the nonprofit organizations like My Family Services. There are some immigration reliefs available. I just want to know out there people who is going through something like this, or maybe your family or friends are going through something like this. Just because of the immigration status, you don't have to stick with abuser. There are the reliefs available. Either it is a permanent or temporary things. Like permanent is example, if you're already married to the US citizen or the green card holder, and you are in the process of getting your papers done, and there is a relief called VAWA. You can look at it, even though it's mentioned as a Violence Against Women's Act, but it is applicable to both spouses, either it's a female or the male. So don't think that you need to stick on to get the green card and go through the whole abuse. You don't have to. That's one of the thing. Other thing which is not so common to be used, but it is important to know, there is a special EAD available for the spouses of the H1. So those are the people who are in H4. They are the most, the group which are going through a lot. They think that, hey, I'm on the H4. If I get out from the abuser, they think that they're not going to have any immigration status and they can't go, especially they have the kids. They think that there is no way out. They have to stick in with them. There is a special EAD available. It is called 765V for the spouses of the H1s who are going through the domestic violence. There is a relief available, even it is temporary. All you need is a piece of paper showing that some kind of the abuse. Sometimes it's just a affidavit and statement from you. It doesn't have to be too much legal. You don't have to be in legal proceedings. All I want to tell is there is a relief available. You don't have to go through the abuse, any kind of the abuse. You have the help available outside the community. Please reach out to any organization, shelters, and look at it to the USCIS websites, and or talk to the attorney who deals with that. There is a lot of nonprofit organizations who wanted to help on this. There's other things available like U visa, asylum, depend upon what your situation is. You can definitely get the relief on that temporarily or permanently. Please don't have to go through the abuse just because you have to stick on to your spouse just for the immigration status. I thought that is very important to talk about it during the pandemic, one of the biggest issue. So anything else you would both want to cover or tell to the community before we hit to the questions?
Personally, I think we hit all the broad topics. I mean, we can look to the questions. The only couple of local things, obviously we'll keep an eye on this upcoming USCIS furlough. I think that's going to be extremely interesting, and how that affects things. So, we want to file things as soon as possible. For any individuals in Canada, I know in Michigan we have a lot of them who are processing TNs. We've recently found out they've limited processing at the Ambassador Bridge to just 2 days a week. So for those of you who are, used to just processing or extending your TN and going any day you want to call ahead. Right now we're only seeing it on Tuesdays and possibly Thursdays or Fridays, but they change. So that was the only thing that I wanted to add about locally with respect to TNs and processing.
Anything from you, Mr. Gori?
Yes, I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's start getting into the questions. It is a one question, but there is like 5 questions related to in one question kind of thing, So it's related to the H-1B, obviously. I am in the US and have a valid H-1B visa stamp until September 2020. At the time of the presidential proclamation, I have also received a new approval notice until September 2023. Can I travel out of the country now and get a new visa stamp based on this new approval, provided the embassy is open? and will be allowed to return in the US?
Yeah, technically, as we discussed earlier, it falls under one of the four prongs of the exception. If you're working with the same employer in the same job, you should be able to get a new visa, but good luck getting an appointment. I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle. So what I advise clients is if you have a valid visa sticker, that's all you need to come back in. You don't need to have a new visa sticker with the 2023 date on it. So enter before your visa sticker expires. Upon entering, have a copy of your approval notice, your new approval notice, and the officer at the port of entry should give you an I-94 to reflect that extended date. But I advise people, be careful traveling. I mean, right now, don't travel unless you absolutely have to. Things are changing. It's very fluid. You can get another presidential proclamation while you're abroad, and then you're trapped there. And another thing is we still see CBP or people at the port of entry really taking this, it's case by case, but we've seen incidents where they've done a deep dive into your cell phone, your social media. We actually had a person who they were looking through his WhatsApp conversations, and I guess he was corresponding with someone that while he was currently on an H-1B, but discussing that while he was on an F, he was working at a gas station, and this is just a private conversation. Not a great thing. He thought it was an encrypted thing, and no one's going to know. And he was talking about how he worked illegally. Now he's on an F1. He thought that was all behind him, and they grabbed his phone. They looked through all that, and they barred him now. They did not allow him to enter. And I just don't think you should travel unless you absolutely have to. That's the stance I'm taking, and I'll revisit it, in 2021. We'll see what the administration.
Yeah. And don't think that you have to travel just to get a visa. That's not a right notion. You don't need to have the visa stamped in your passport. So when you get the extension until the September 2023, you should have received the I-94 also, because you are in the US. Unless it's an emergency situation, as Mr. Jacob said, that please don't travel. You don't need to have the visa stamping. You can just stay with your I-94, with the new I-94, which was received with extension approval. So continuation of the same question, my wife's H4 and H4 EAD applications are still pending. No change in status since the case was received in May. Her visa stamp also expires in September. I think that he was worried more about just to get the visa, looks like. So again, it's pending. She can stay safely. I don't think so. Nothing to be worried in that case. How long can she remain legally in the country while the application is pending? I think it was answered. As long as it's pending, you're okay until it get approved or some kind of the decision based on that. And what is going to happen with the pending furlough announcement? Not sure what it is.
Yeah, I think that we talked about that too. I think he's talking about the USCIS furlough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, we don't know what's going to happen. The Democrats in the Senate have said there's enough funding to at least last till October, and the USCIS disagrees and says no, we have until 8/31, and then we're going to furlough 13,000 USCIS employees, right? Which is a crazy number. But as we said, we think they'll still accept applications because they're going to take our money, but they're probably not going to work on it, or the remaining 1/3 of the employees will be working on it, and it'll be slower than it already is. I think this is a little bit more political, and we'll see what happens. But once again, it's completely outside our control. So all you can do is, file if you have a case that's eligible for filing, and expect delays. If they're slow now, I can't imagine how slow they're going to be with the furlough. I mean, it's gonna take double as long, I would imagine, if not more.
But you're safe, because it's pending. But I understand the H4 EAD concept is kind of hurts the families. I think it's a local question. Next question. Is it possible to renew her Michigan driver's license while application is pending using receipt notice? maybe one of you can answer. I'm not sure about it.
I'm not sure. I read something recently. If H1B is pending, they can get extension, based on the regulations until 120 days or whatever. I'm sorry, 240 days. So beyond that, I'm not sure whether they will extend. Do you have anything?
I haven't seen anything beyond that, and I haven't seen at least the local Secretary of State issue anything different. It is kind of crazy how each Secretary of State or DMV, whatever they call it, tends to have separate and different rules state by state. So, we sometimes advise clients, we'll look up what the fact sheet is for that state and what they accept. So the advice does depend on each state. I would hope now with our current Secretary of State that we would probably get a little bit more mercy when it comes to things like this, but I have not seen something official out of the Secretary of State, the local Michigan Secretary of State for driver's license.
Yeah.
I know some states, based on the receipt notice, not approval, they will give temporary up to 30 to 60 days. Again, you just have to either walk in or call them or find the information maybe locally, how they're doing. So the next question is more related to the green card. To apply a green card for my sibling, how long does it take to process the petition? I think it's more visa bulletin related, how long it's taking. I'm thinking that this is somebody from India. So what would you say, like the F4 is like what, 13, 14 years now? The wait time?
Yeah, I looked at the visa bulletin for the upcoming visa bulletin, and they're saying F4, which is brothers and sisters of U.S. citizen, they're going to process cases from 3/8/2005. So
about 15 years.
Yeah, about 15 years. And when people look at that, they of course, go crazy. That's an extremely long wait. It could take 15 years. It could take less than 15 years. It could take longer than 15 years. We don't know the way the visa bulletin operates. I don't think God knows how that works. So, but we're hopeful. I don't think family-based is a big priority, but with the new administration, potentially, I know one of Biden's proposals was to change the visa bulletin and change the per country allotment, at least on the employment side. That could have significant changes. So all you can do, as we were, I think, discussing offline, is get in line. It's get your place in line, file today, because if there is a change in the law, you're already in line and it'll move faster. But if you say it's 15 years, why bother? And you wait another 4 or 5 years, and then there's a law change, and now you're at the back of the line even further. So if the fees are low, because as we said, the fees are probably going up in most categories. So it's a long wait, no way around it. But I would get in line if I were in that situation.
Yeah, it's a multiple step application process. The first step is so important. So you lock in that date. That date is the priority date, and visa bulletin is something, the bulletin released by the Department of State every month. So to watch that date, you need to be in the line. That is so important. Thank you, Mr. Jacob, on that. And regarding to the same question,
Oh, did you get frozen again?
It appears, yeah. There is nothing, I don't think there is much to discuss here.
I'm seeing a couple of questions. I'll jump in. I've seen on the chat. One of the questions is, recently I read news, State Department okays 100,000 extra green cards for tech workers. How far is this true? Yeah, I read something that's completely fabricated or made up.
I don't know where it's coming from.
I don't know where it's coming from either. Yeah, so I would say it's not true. But there are tons of proposals, and people get too excited because they hear of a proposal or some congressman or senator proposes something, you know, it's got to get through the House, through the Senate, and then eventually signed by the president. And in this election year, don't hold your breath about, you know, this administration signing something that's going to get a bunch of foreign nationals, you know, green cards. I just don't see it happening. I'm looking at another question about the travel with the visa. So that was similar to the one we had earlier. Consulates in India, are they scheduling appointments for F1 visas? Mr. Gowda, what are you seeing on that? I've seen technically they are, but I personally don't have any firsthand.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they are issuing visas if those who has appointments earlier. If you want to go and get visa appointment now, you may not be able to get it. It's you know, there is a long waiting. So they are issuing visas for F1s.
Okay. And the last question I see on the chat is somebody asked level 1 to level 4 wages. If we go down from level 3 to level 2 for the same role when filing the extension, are you seeing any issues with that? That is VJ's question.
Well, technically you can go down, but there may be questions asked. You have to justify why the salary has been lowered compared to previous H-1B. So as long as the employer can justify and give a good convincing answer, that should be fine.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I haven't seen personally an issue with this. You know, there was a point when, for whatever reason, USCIS changed their mind and said you can no longer file level 1. I think there's no basis in law for that. But so, you know, you had employers filing level 2 or in some cases level 3. But I have not seen an RFE where they've called that into question. Like, oh, you were level 4 and now you're level 2. What has happened? But if that were to happen and you were to get a request for evidence at that point, obviously you'd have to explain why. And it is the same job, but, you know, due to COVID, due to the status of my employer, I've taken a reduction in pay, but I still qualify. I'm being paid above prevailing wage. And so it shouldn't be an issue, especially if you're still at level 2.
I'm extremely sorry. I'm gone again.
No problem.
Are you taking the questions from the chat?
Yes, we answered.
Okay.
We answered all the questions from the chat. I think we covered all of them. So, yeah, we're good on the chat. I think Mr. Gowda covered myself answered their questions.
Okay. Previously, I was asking about the sibling question to the green card. In related to that, I don't think so we can answer a lot of content in that question. She was asking that, can that sibling can apply for the tourist visa and come? Also, what are the prerequisites to get a tourist visa to USA if the person is unemployed? I guess that's, I know that we are all laughing.
One of the conditions for tourist visa is you must have no intent to immigrate, okay? So you have a pending immigration petition, you know, which is approved, I believe. So there is an intention. You have to see how you can convince the consular officer there and again here at the border why this is, you know, even though you have an immigrant intent, you know, in future you want to immigrate, but at this juncture for this visa purpose, my intent is purely non-immigrant. I want to go and whatever the purpose you have claimed, you complete the purpose and I'm going to return. You must have something to show that what is there to, for so compelling reason for you to return. So you have to show or convince the officer there at the consulate. So primarily that's all, you know, you must have good basic, you know, family ties and employment ties to back home. Then probably you can get B2 visitor visa or B1 visitor visa. They are issuing visas, those who have filed pending immigrant visa petitions.
Somebody is asking, can you please talk about emergency visa appointment in consulates in India? Is it done for H-1B visa stamping?
I am not sure H1B visa. I don't know what emergent situation you can give. I don't think you can say that in economic reasons, emergent situation. I don't think that that will be ground. You know, again, as Mr. Jacob explained earlier, if you are working for the same employer, you already had H1. Possibly they can give, and if you get a good letter from employer why your presence is so important, vital to the company. Okay, so they may consider.
How about somebody who is working in the health field or something? Do you encourage them to apply?
Oh, certainly.
Or even the H1Bs who are not essential workers, maybe indirectly helping to the clients, maybe can try. Do you suggest something like that?
Yeah, healthcare workers and those who are supporting staff, they do consider. Okay, so they can probably get a letter. Say, for example, you're working in the hospital as an important IT guy who is who is necessary. So you get a letter from the hospital and why your presence is required so badly. So they should be able to get or issue visas, and you should be able to get visa.
Okay. Is anybody who didn't type in the chat or?
I see one question that came out right before you jumped on. It says, I had an I-140 approved in January with company A and recently moved to company B. Do I need to file the perm process again? So yes, to quickly answer that one, anytime you switch, the green card is a 3-step process. The labor certification, which is we call perm, is step 1. And that is tied to the employer. So anytime you leave your employer to go to a new employer, you have to start the 3-step process all over again. Now, if you had an approved I-140, which is step 2 of the process, your place in line is secure. So you move to the new employer, they have to do a labor certification all over again, test the US job market. But the good news is once you get past the perm, your priority date normally would be the date that it's filed. Instead of it being, let's say, December 2020, when you file the I-140, you're able to save your place in line and use 2011 January. So to answer that question, you will have to start the perm process all over again with the new employer. The employer has to cover all the costs associated with perm. But the good news is your place in line will be secured at the I-140 stage.
Yeah, and perm is one of the complicated process. You definitely need an attorney to go through something like that. I'm sure your employer will avoid that. Is there a H1B to Indian nurses who like to start career in the US?
Well, yes, but not as a regular, if you are nurse supervisor or nurse administrator, you can still qualify as H1B for H1B, not as a regular nurse. Okay.
Yeah. At some point they had it, but it's not there anymore. Obviously, it's been what, 2007, I guess, the last time. And but as Mr. Gowda said, that if they do qualify under the specialty occupation as a manager or role or something like that administratively, maybe we could try that way. And if somebody's on the H4 EAD, that's a great option to start the career. It's a lot of them jump into the nurses if they're on the H4 EADs, and this is the right time to do that.
Yeah, if you go into the nursing field, the problem, like you said, it has to be a specialty occupation. And although most of the nurses have a bachelor's degree, you technically can be a nurse with an associate's degree. So exactly. What you said is great. If you can work on an H4 EAD, do it. But just as importantly, that's where you want to maybe get your master's and become a nurse practitioner. And so when you're an NP, where the requirement to be an NP, a nurse practitioner, is a master's degree, now maybe you have some more options available for an H1B, because now you could argue it is a specialty occupation as opposed to a general entry-level nurse.
Agreed. I don't see any other questions. Do you guys see any other questions? I know that I logged out. Maybe I might have raised some.
I think we got all of them.
So did anybody who didn't get the chance, or do you have any questions you want to unmute and just ask the panel? One at a time, obviously. Are any questions from My Family Services that we can answer?
Hi, this is Madhura from My Family Services. I don't have a question. I just want to say that this has been a very insightful and very helpful session. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
Shanti
you.
Menon from My Family Services. I have a question, and this is about someone I know in India. She is engaged to a gentleman here, and they were supposed to, wedding was fixed for May, but because of COVID and his H-1B situation, I'm not too clear of those details. He's not able to go to India at this time. And one of the questions they had was whether if she came on a tourist visa and got married here, is that a workable solution?
The person is on H-1B, you said?
Yeah, my fiance is on an H-1B. The lady I know is in India. She's a dentist. So the one option that somebody suggested was that she come here on a tourist visa and get married. Or, she just apply for a student visa to do a master's or whatever it is that the dental program involves.
I know the panel is hesitating. I can see. I'm hesitating myself.
Well,
Yeah, no,
I can say that. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of coming in on as a visitor visa and getting married. As Mr. Gowda discussed earlier, the B visa is supposed to show non-immigrant intent, which means you don't plan to stay here. So if you say you're coming here for a vacation and then 3 days later you got married, you're opening yourself up for future issues and problems. So I'm not a fan of doing that. And she's a dentist. It's a little bit difficult because she could come here as an F1. If she finds some program to enroll into, it's an expensive route to do that. There's not really a master's for dentistry, right? So whether she's gonna have to start school all over, I don't know how that would work for the dental program. But in terms of then getting married, it's different. So right now I would be patient with the travel issues and not do something just to get married. Because you want to get married right away, that will have some future consequences, like entering on a visitor visa and later it being considered a fraudulent entry. That would be my advice on that.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
Intention is very important behind that. That's what we usually suggest to all our clients, and we are hesitant because definitely the intention is not the same thing. And moreover, even if she want to try the F1 and B1, anyway, the consulates are not opened either way, So that's something they have to look into it.
Hi, this is Mona Sashatal from My Family Services, and I just wanted to mention that it was a very informative and informational and educational webinar. Thanks to all of you. But I just want to let all the guests know that we have recorded the session and it will be available on our website as well. And if your question didn't get answered, you can still continue to send the question to contact us at myfamilyservices.com, and we'll forward it to the panel and get them answered.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, any advice from any of you before we have a closing remarks, this?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of our webinar, this is general information for all the viewers. And I hope we clarified some of the questions you all had. And again, Thanks to My Family Services for having us here. Thank you all the panelists. Thanks my fellow panelists, Madhurima and Shaju.
Yeah, I echo those statements. This is such a great organization, and it was a pleasure to assist in any way that that I can. And so, thank you for my fellow panel as well. You guys were great and made this very easy. Thank you for moderating, Mother. I know this is always a fun thing to do, but if we can ever be of assistance to the organization, more than willing to help out.
Yes.
You guys do amazing and great work, and so really proud to be associated with it in any way that we can.
Thank you, Mr. Gowd and Mr. Jacob. And as I'm going to continue to say the same thing. It is a very honor and pleasure to be a part of this and educating the community. And thank you to my family services to think about this topic, which is very, very important to the community. And I do want to say that who are eligible to vote, please don't forget to vote in November. It matters a lot. It changes everything. It is important. It doesn't matter what party comes in. It's so important to use your rights. I think that's what our goal should be. Maybe we can have a next panel on the election and voting rights. That's so important to educate everybody. I think that's a great panel. And again, thank you so much, My Family Services. And they're a great organization. Please look out their website, maifs.org. They've been very helpful to the community and to in Michigan. And thank you so much for organizing again this panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.